X-Wingace.
Hello, my name is X-Wingace, and today I'm going to show you some of the tools and how to use them. I'll also be showing you and helping you understand how the layer works within Photoshop, and I'll be showing you how to save through Legacy within Photoshop. So to start off with, I'm going to show you the Marquise tool. We have the rectangular Marquise tool, the ellipse Marquise tool, the single row Marquise tool, and the single column Marquise tool. You technically use them for an image if you wanted to select anywhere part of the picture you wanted to get rid of. I'll show you a quick demonstration. So I'll use this, and if we were to use this now on there, you would be able to usually delete it. But since I don't have another layer, it's not going to work. But usually you would use that, and then you would delete any parts you didn't want. Like you can use a circle to delete a circle part of the picture, or basically a line or column, well, row, I should say, sorry, or column on the picture that you want to give off. So I would recommend using these if you wanted to get rid of something. Right, next is the lasso tool. Technically, you use this tool to more or less select something and then get rid of it. Technically, the idea is you're supposed to go around an area, and then once you connect it, you can hit delete and all that to get rid of a background you don't want, which is useful if you're creating overlays and all that. So it's a really good and useful tool to use. Right, so the next one is object selection, quick tool selection, and one object. These are all tools that are in an image or you just want to select something that's more or less a subject you just want to focus on rather than more or less the thing. So for example, I can select this sword and it should highlight that part of the image. So and I'm going to show you is going to be the eyedropper. Sorry. This tool more or less allows you to select the colors within, and it can also more or less change your color palette depending on what area you're selecting. Which this is useful if you want to select a color within an image that you more or less want to use for your picture. So if you are like wanting to get the exact color from the image, then eyedropper would be useful in getting that. So this one is more or less just the crop tool. This just allows you to crop a image or the page if you wanted to a certain size to basically the areas you more or less just want to show. So basically just like that, you can have it like that, and then you just press OK, and then there you go, just like that. So another one is the frame tool. So basically this allows me to basically just select it like that, and then it'll make it into a frame and all that. There's also a circle version if you wanted to use that instead, but this is the more or less what it does. It more or less puts your image into like a frame. So that's how that tool works. And yeah, there's like the circle one, there's a triangle one, there's an hexagon one, and a star one. So yeah, that's how that tool works. So the next one is the grading tool. This one is more or less just to have for background. So this basically just gives you some colors and multiple colors. You can also change this by, again, you can click on it, and then if you like have an image or something, you can more or less change it to a different color. Or if you wanted to, you can have the same color or multiple or a different color. You can also add a bit more onto it as well. If you like click here and all that, you can definitely add like more colors as well to it if you want like 3 colors or 4 colors. So yeah, that's more or less how the gradient tool works. Right, so this one for burn more or less allows you to darken an image. As you can see now, my image is more or less darkening for a bit in the picture. It's not as light. It's way more darker than it was before. Of course, if you want it to be more light, you want to select the dodge tool, and then what that does, it will then more or less bring light to certain parts of the image, which is useful because if you want a certain piece of an image to be brighter, then these tools would definitely help, especially if you want it darker or lighter. So on subject of brightness, this tool is kind of like the same, but this one more or less adjusts the brightness to quite more of a higher contrast than the dodge tool. Basically, just makes this really bright rather than more clear and that. So yeah, that's also how that works. It's really good if you want to also more or less have an image that's too dark and you want to lighten up a bit more. So yeah, that's how I recommend using that tool. So here's the text tool. You more or less somewhat understand how this one works. You more or less put it on, then you then type a word or a letter in, and you can be like more or less like that. And then you can move it like that, and you got like, you know, basically what I put it for example is hello word. Try to spell world, but I couldn't really exactly spell it. You can also change the color, but you're going to make sure that it's highlighted first before you can actually do it, because otherwise it will not work. So like that, and then you can change your color. You can change the fonts if you wanted to different fonts, and then you can change the sides if you wanted to, as well as how if you want it centered, left right angle text or left angle text. It's more or less entirely up to you on how you want to use that tool. Of course, then you got the pen tool. This more or less just allows, you can basically just use this for light lines and all that. You can just technically, you can do like something like that. There's also different versions of it. You got like freeform, which is just allows you to be more freeform with it instead of like that. Then the curve is more or less a curve tool. It somewhat does that. It allows you to curve the pen and the lines more. This just more or less adds an anchor point. So if you wanted to add an anchor point like here, then you got an anchor point now that you can basically just reach down there on all that. And then you can just more or less probably move it and all that. Oh, or maybe not. Yeah, you could definitely add like an anchor point to that one if you wanted to. And then if you don't want that anchor point, you can more or less just delete it like that. And yeah, that's more or less how you can get rid of anchor points. And then curve point is more or less just basically to increase the curve or decrease the angles of it. So you can basically make it wider or like that or slimmer. So let's get rid of that now. We won't be needing that. So yep, the next tool then is basically this. This is the zoom in tool and zoom out tool. You can basically just more or less to zoom in. Then if you wanted to zoom out, you can either control alt, just click alt, and then you can zoom out. Or you can do it from up here if you wanted to. Right, so next then is the clone fin. This tool can be a bit of a pain to use if you really don't understand how to fully use it, but you need to make sure to click alt, and then what usually happens then is that you can basically start making a clone version of the image that you more or less done. So if you can see at the bottom, it's a bit messy, I will not lie. Not exactly a great example. But yeah, it's more or less cloned down the bottom. And that's more or less how I use the clone stamp on that. So, and then this would be more for your patterns and all that. So if I were to do that, it would give you something like this. Which I'm quite surprised my logo turns into a tree, but hey, that makes the two quite interesting sometimes. So right, so next up then we got the eraser tool. This more or less just sorry everyone, erases your either your image or what you've literally drawn using the brush tool. You can basically just use it to correct any mistakes, but it doesn't really technically work on the line tool, so it's more or less just used to get rid of either your image or your drawing that you've used with the brush. And speaking of brush, next is the brush tool. This more or less just allows you to draw. Let's try a different color because that one's a bit hard to see. So it just allows you to draw like that. And then with the pencil tool, it's like the same, but except it's pencil form. Then you got the color replacement. So this will probably likely replace your color that you used for your previous thing. Unfortunately, I can't seem to get it to work. Unfortunately. And then you got the mixer brush, which I believe probably likely mixes more or less with your text. Ah, yes, there you go. It mixes with your text or whatever you've drawn. So yeah, that's how the mixer tool works on that one. Then you got the click one. This one's more or less just used just to select certain things. Then you can more or less just get rid of it. This is somewhat like the same. It's just more or less your move tool and all that for the cross one and all that. This more or less just grabs the image that you're using just to move it around. If you want to move it over there, move it down there, up there, or there. It's up to you on that one. So you can definitely use it if you feel like you want to move it away somewhere if you've got other work on it, but I don't know if it's really being to be that useful to you, but it's there in case you in case you do feel the need to use it. And then finally we've got the healing spot. What this does, it basically just fixes any mistakes in what you've done, drawn, and just heals like spots within your image and all that. So basically, for example, if there was like a mistake in your thing, you can just basically just remove it and all that. So here is like the remover tool. Unfortunately, I can't seem to. Oh, there we go. Again, something. So this one, I think I crashed. This tends to happen with Photoshop if you. Yeah, but yeah, that does tend to happen. Sometimes you can crash it and then it goes all horribly wrong. So, oh, there we go. We're getting something now. Quite slow and all that. I gotta admit, not really what I was expecting. But yeah, that's what this tool does. It more or less just removes mistakes area or areas you don't want, and just basically just removes it like that. Unfortunately, sometimes when you're using Adobe, it can definitely crash sometimes on all that. We'll just wait for this to finish, and then we'll move on to the next tools that I want to show you quickly. Then, so we've got the healing brush. This more or less just heals things within the image, so you could just basically just heals it up like that. Just fix it. If there's like a spot over there, and what it does, it more or less just copies copies it like a thing anyway, so you can just heal it like that. So if there was a mistake or a part you wanted and you wanted it over there, you can just basically move it over here. The patch, someone basically just fixes something, and any object you more or less had a problem or didn't work properly, you just basically just fix it with a patch, and then it more or less just selects an area that you more or less wanted to get rid of, or that's a mistake, so you can basically just use the patch to fix it and all that. So content awareness is probably likely the same, I believe, because more or less you select something and then you just remove that content and all that. So yeah, that's basically it. And then last one, this tool, you basically just use it for the red tool anyway. You just basically, if for example, if there was a character, or like you took a photo of your friend and then you have the eyes for the red thing, what you would technically use this red eye to is to remove the red eye contents on that person. I could probably definitely show you quickly. I'll get an image and all that quickly and show you, but mostly that's what it does in the sense and all that. So let's quickly remove this and I'll be back with you in a minute. To quickly show you, now that I'm back and all that, and sorry about that everyone, I just wanted to get a quick image. So technically this would be what I'm talking about, that you've got more or less red eyes in your photos or anything within the eyes. And what this tool does, it will then select it and will more or less begin removing that red eye, and then more or less you've becomes more clearer and more well, less red eyes, and you just get the normal eyes that you basically wanted to have for your photo. So let's keep going until we've got a bit more clearer. And there we go. That's basically how this tool works. And finally, we're on the last tools I want to show you, and that will be the shape tool. So basically, you got a rectangle tool, you got the ellipse tool, you got the triangle tool, you got the polygon tool, the line tool, and a custom tool, which I have one of the line because I did a work thing with my thing, and I ended up having a custom line for. Alright, you can have anything you want for custom shapes, but my one's one of the line. And yeah, that's basically it for the tools. Right, so now I'm going to show you how the layer works within Adobe Photoshop. You may have noticed before when we were doing showing you the tools, they saw like the rectangle and the gradient tool appearing up here. This is because that each time when you use a tool or shape, it gets added to here. This is more or less just to show where each shape and tools that's been used is placed. So basically, if you wanted to, you can move it around, but I'll show you a bit more when we've got all the shapes and stuff I wanted to add in. So if you wanted to, you can add a shape and then a line, then it will add a line for you, a rectangle, then it adds a rectangle onto the as well, a circle, a triangle, and a polygon. As well, if you want, you can add a custom one. And what it'll do then, it will add it onto here. If you want to hide something, you can more or less just click on this, that, and that, and it will hide it for you. If you want to bring them back, just click on these, and it will come back. Also as well, if you wanted to, you can bring in an image into here, and what it will do then, it will add this image to the layer as well. So, like I said before, what I was going to say, you can actually move these around. So if you wanted to, you can have the gradient tool upwards, and that's what this would do. Anything that's underneath it will then go behind the gradient tool. And if I were to bring it back down, then everything that's above the gradient will then go over the gradient. So if you wanted to add another layer, you can click Add Layer. And what this would do, it will add another layer onto it. But if you didn't want that layer, what you can do is select this one here, and then click Delete Layer, and then click Yes. And then you've deleted it. One last final thing I want to show you with the layer is if you click all of these together, and you will then click right click and then merge layers. What this would do is then create one singular image, combining it into one. And that's basically it for the how to use layers. Well, here we are for the last part of the video. I am now going to show you how to save through Web Legacy. So first we need to go to File and down to Export. We want to save it as Save for Web. There are different options. We've got like GIF, PNG, or JPEG, sorry, PNG 8, PNG 24, and WBMP. Those are different options depending on what you want to do with your work. With the colors, sensitivity, and some other options if you want to use those. Diffusion, no different pattern or noise. There's transparency, no transparency, different or other transparencies you can have. Colors, different 100%. Matching, that's mostly for the foreground and eyedrop color. Web snap, interlaid, ambient color profile, convert to NSBS, warranty color, copyright and contact info. You got the color table. This is just the image size of what we're using, percentage, and all that. So to save it through this way, we just got to click here. You can choose whatever you want, depending on what work is needed, but I'm going to stick to PNG 8. So I'm going to click Save. Then I'm going to name it as Example. Now what we're going to do then is we're going to go to Library. I'm going to go to Pictures, and then we're just going to click Save. And there we go. That's more or less how we just save through Web Legacy. And that's it for the video. I've shown how some of the tools in Adobe Photoshop, how the layers work, and how to save for Web Legacy. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the video. If you liked it, leave a like